Welcome to Project Management and How to Implement Best Practices by Raymond Johnson for Project Management at Colorado State University for Dr. Amir Hadi. Let's start with project selection. Project selection is the main role of senior management. They use criteria that is quantitative or qualitative, and they have to make sure that the project that is selected is one that will accomplish the organization's strategic plan. In other words, it needs to be in harmony with the objectives that are in the strategic plan of the organization. An analysis is done, and it's a financial analysis, and that determines whether or not is it feasible, is it possible, and is it something that should be done. There are a number of methods that are used when doing these particular types of feasibility studies. In addition to that, there's prioritizing the project. This is utilized when entering a new project. It's used in conjunction with controlling risk or even allocating resources. And then there's the project organization. The project organization has 5 different steps, and that is initiating, planning, executing, monitoring, and control, as well as closing. Initiating primarily focuses with and deals with starting the project or aligning the stakeholders' project with the deliverables of the project. The planning phase focuses more so on finalizing the scope and the objectives and to create a plan to reach those objectives. This is where the work breakdown study is actually created and other elements of the plan, such as the risk management plan and all the other plans that go into the project plan. Then, with the executing of the stage of the project organization, this is where people are aligned, resources are aligned, and stakeholders' expectations are aligned with the final objectives of the project. When we get to monitoring and controlling, this is where change control and monitoring events actually take place. The monitoring and control and steering the events or controlling the events to go into a particular direction, and those plans are created in the risk, in the event of risk. Now, with risk, it's not an issue of if, but it's a matter of when. And so a risk management plan is executed here while different situations arise. And then in the 5th stage, there's the closing stage, which is where the project has to be completed, all contracts have to be closed, a risk register needs to be generated and finalized. In fact, the risk register is something that should be generated throughout the life of the project from beginning to end, but it's finalized and documented and closed and chronicled and stored. And then also the project has to be closed. The project has to be verified that the objectives that were on set at the beginning stage during the planning stage have actually come to being. And then here's an illustration of how a project is actually organized. There are 5 process groups, as we mentioned, and these process groups start with the initiating on the right side of the screen, the blue arrow all the way through planning, executing, monitoring and controlling, as well as closing. And then we have program management and an approach also for program management. Program management actually manages multiple projects simultaneously. Program management is not only just project management, but program management actually manages the actual programs that are under the umbrella of the organization. Program management also identifies or chooses specific projects for the portfolio, which then allows all of those portfolio projects to be bundled together under one umbrella. Program management also evaluates projects. It uses different criteria. It uses business management analysis, such as cost and benefit feasibility. Now, this is where the actual approach aspect of program management it comes to the fore. And so the projects are actually evaluated through these different methods of criteria and business management analysis. And then there's also the timeline of the project, needs to be examined, and that's according to the resource availability and the market analysis that takes place. So not all projects can take place at the same time within the portfolio, but they need to be timed. There needs to be a timeline for the different projects to take place because different resources, different human resources, different finances, different materials, just manpower, different things need to go into making the project successful, and that is something that has to be timed. Now, when you time the program, you have to make sure that it's planned correctly and that it's scheduled correctly. And part of the planning and the scheduling, they work hand in hand. This is essential for making sure that the budget, the timing of the projects, the timing of the resources, the timing of the materials, and the labor is important. And this is what a project manager needs to make sure that they do, that they have adequate planning and scheduling. And an article that I read about a week or so ago mentioned that program managers don't normally have all of the skills necessary to be a good program manager. Program managers are made, they're built. And it's usually the job of the project management office to essentially make sure that that program manager has everything that they need in order to be successful. But one of the main things is that everything they do is all about accomplishing the organization's objectives through their strategic plan. And so that's what a program manager does. One of the things a program manager does, they use a Gantt chart for planning and scheduling. This is good for a good tool for managing large projects. It's also good for demonstrating how different parts of a project interrelate or interact with each other because it's almost like a timeline, a first, second, third, based on dates or timeline. It's also great for scheduling project activities, and it's very, very easy to understand. Now, a program manager also needs to monitor and control throughout the life of the project. This means that a part of the risk management plan is to make sure that there's a monitoring and controlling plan that is in place. Different tools need to be identified so that these tools can be used to forewarn of risks that could be detrimental to the success of the project. And so monitoring the triple constraints of the project is also taking place during the monitoring and controlling process. And if you remember earlier, the slide that we showed of the actual process groups, the monitoring and controlling is ongoing throughout the life of the actual project. And so when you're dealing with monitoring and controlling, you're monitoring time, you're monitoring cost, or you're monitoring your schedule, and you're monitoring your budgets and your costs, making sure that you don't go over. You're also monitoring the quality that is being produced. And what the different tools do is they forewarn that there are different things that could be taking place or that are taking place that are dangerous to the success of the project. And so a project manager as well as a program manager needs to make sure they've got good tools in place to help them to do this. And now, when you talk about communication, metrics, and updates, this is something that a program manager and a project manager would also need to do. They need to make sure that they have the right metrics that they need in order to accurately monitor the program correctly, so that when they communicate that the right picture and the right information of exactly what's happening within real time is taking place, so that updates that are given on a regular basis to the stakeholders are accurate, are thorough, and are shortened to the point. Because when it comes to updating your stakeholders, you do not want them to be shocked or surprised when different negative things or adverse things take place for the project. And so you need to make sure you've got the right metrics in place, and you've got to make sure you've got the right metrics that monitor process management. In other words, how things are being run, what is happening, timelines, etc. Project performance, how is the project actually performing? What is it doing? And then also the business management side, that's where your finances come in. And so corrective actions need to be identified when a particular phase of the project is in error. But here's what happens. These particular metrics are picked ahead of time, and so are the corrective actions. And so, in a situation where there may be something that takes place that is unanticipated, it's up to the project manager to figure out what to do and to make that hard call. But this particular risk assessment plan, a risk management plan, is thorough and is supposed to cover every possible scenario that can ever be imagined with this project going wrong. And so corrective action does need to take place when something does go wrong. Gap analysis is a type of metric. The gap analysis is basically a way to say, here's where you are, and this is where you plan to be, and here's where the gap is or the difference. And so it shows you how far off you are from your original plan. The smaller the gap, then the better off you are. But the bigger the gap, the more off you are. And this is just a chart that I hope illustrates it. I made it hoping that it would illustrate just those 2 points: what you plan for the project and where you actually are, how you measure up to that. And the bigger the gap, the worse off you are. The smaller the gap, the better off you are. And you can make minor corrective actions if necessary. Now, in addition to this, risk management is something that has to be incurred because an individualized risk management plan has to be developed. It identifies risks and analyzes whether those risks are qualitative or quantitative. In other words, when those risks are identified, they can be identified qualitatively, meaning how will this actually impact the project? Or they can be identified quantitatively. In other words, a numerical value can be assigned to the actual risk to help project managers rank the risks according to a low impact to the project, a medium impact to the project's success, or a high impact. And then there's also risk mitigation. There's a change control process. Who is the person or the persons that will control? What types of controls will they be allowed to change? And in what types of situations? And then also there's the risk prioritization and impact, which we mentioned earlier, which deals with the quantitative and qualitative analysis of risks. Now, the role of technology can be used throughout this entire project to help organize the project, to help identify potential areas of risk, so it assists with different parts of the project plan, to also assist team members in collaboration. This is especially important when the team members are spread out over a region or even over the world. And then also technology can illustrate real-time changes to team members. So team members can see when things are actually taking place in real time. And this is a helpful tool when the team member is not all working together in the same office or in the same time zone even. And then technology can be used in executive and stakeholder updates during reporting. It will help them during their rollouts. Now, when we talk about the role of technology, then we want to go ahead and conclude here. And we recognize that these are the references that we've used for the project.